Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we are looking into a pretty major legal battle
Okay.
that the Trump administration is waging against the state of Illinois, Chicago, and Cook County, and it's all over their immigration laws.
Wow.
So to really get into this, we are going to be referencing two sources today.
Mm-hmm.
One is actually a copy of the complaint itself, and the other is
Mm.
an article by CBS News, and both are dated February 6th, 2025. So pretty fresh off the presses, and what we're hoping to accomplish today is really understand what this lawsuit is all about, why it's happening, and most importantly, what it could mean going forward.
Yeah, that's a big one for sure.
So, right off the bat, it seems like this whole thing is about more than just disagreeing on immigration policy. Would you say that's accurate?
Absolutely. I think, at its core, what we're seeing here is a real struggle over power. Like, who gets to decide how immigration is enforced? In
Mhm.
this country, the Justice Department is basically saying that Illinois is overstepping its boundaries with these laws that they're claiming, are actually obstructing federal immigration enforcement.
So you're saying it's not just a difference of opinion, it's that these local laws are actually like getting in the way of federal operations.
Exactly. And the Justice Department isn't mincing words either. Like, they're straight up saying that these local laws are discriminating against federal immigration law, which is,
Discriminate against, okay, hold on. I need you to break that down for me. What do they mean by that?
yeah, so what they're really getting at is that they believe Illinois is intentionally trying to make it harder for federal agents to do their job, enforcing immigration laws.
Hmm. And, the complaint even goes so far as to use the term willful noncompliance, which is pretty strong language. So can you give us a real-world example of how this supposed interference actually plays out?
Sure thing. One of the big examples that they highlight in the complaint is how these local laws actually restrict cooperation between local law enforcement and federal immigration authorities like ICE.
Yeah.
They actually cite a specific case where the Chicago police refused to honor a detainer request from ICE, which basically meant that an individual that ICE had flagged for possible deportation was just released back into the community.
Wow, so that really does paint a clear picture
Mm.
of the Justice Department side of things.
Mm.
But looking at the CBS article, it sounds like Illinois officials have a totally different perspective. They're saying that they're not breaking any laws, but rather that they're trying to protect their communities.
Right, and that's where this whole concept of sanctuary cities comes into play. Basically, these are jurisdictions, cities or states that have adopted these policies specifically designed to limit their cooperation with federal immigration enforcement. And a lot of times the idea is to create, what they see as a safer space for undocumented immigrants, try to prevent families from being torn apart.
So they're basically saying we're not obstructing, we're protecting.
Exactly, and, they're not just pulling that out of thin air either.
Yeah.
They're bringing their own legal arguments to the table. They point to the 10th Amendment,
Mm.
which reserves certain powers for the states. And they say that, immigration enforcement, particularly when it comes to local policing, that falls under their umbrella.
So it's almost like we're looking at two opposing forces, both claiming to be acting within the law, but with totally different ideas of what that actually means.
You got it. And honestly, I think this lawsuit is really a microcosm of a much larger national debate. It forces us to wrestle with some pretty complex questions about federalism, states' rights, and even the very definition of what it means to be a nation of laws.
And one thing that really jumped out at me from the complaint was the statistic that over 13,000 undocumented immigrants were arrested by immigration officials in Illinois between 2016 and 2025. I mean, that's a huge number, and it really underscores just how much is at stake with this case, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. I mean, if the Justice Department wins, this could set a legal precedent that could seriously weaken the ability of other cities and states to implement their own immigration policies.
Yeah,
It could really have a chilling effect on the sanctuary city movement as a whole.
Wow. So I think we've done a good job of really laying out the core issues here. This whole battle between federal and local authority, the different ways that people are interpreting the law, and of course, the very real consequences that all of this has for individuals and communities. So
Yeah.
as we wrap up here, what would you say is the one thing that you really want our listeners to walk away thinking about?
That's a great question. I think, regardless of how this specific case plays out, what it really highlights is just how desperately we need comprehensive immigration reform at the national level.
Hmm.
As long as we have this patchwork of conflicting laws and policies across the country, we're going to keep seeing these kinds of legal battles pop up. And, that just leaves communities in limbo and families vulnerable. So I think the question we all need to be asking ourselves is, what kind of immigration system do we as a nation truly want to have?
That's a powerful question. and one that I hope our listeners will continue to explore. So thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and be sure to keep digging into these crucial issues on your own. Until next time.